Hello, good morning, good evening, good day, good afternoon, and aloha. Welcome back to another live on KGRADB Friday version of the Unidentified Celebrity Review, your home for credible news, reviews, and commentary on everything UAP and UFO. My name is Luis Jimenez, as always, creator and host of these airwaves today for the next 2 hours. Welcome, you guys. I'm excited that you're here. We've got a really great show today. Of course, before we get started, got to pay a couple bills. Want to say thank you to DOS Tapes. They provide all the tunes you hear on the show. Bandcamp link is in the description below. This show's available on iTunes, Spotify, wherever you find your podcasts. You can enjoy the show on the road. Please leave us a rate review. Goes a very long way. Want to say thank you to the Patreon members, future Patreon members, anyone who sends super chats. Thank you guys so much. YouTube memberships. Everybody out there who helps us with $1, we truly appreciate it. It's not necessary. None of our content is put behind a paywall, so you can enjoy everything at your leisure. But if you can support with $1, that'd be great. If you can't, hit that like, share, subscribe button, ring the bell, share with your friends, tell everybody about the show. We're going to be doing some cool stuff here in the near future. We're going to fill you in on some stuff here, not today, but in the coming shows. So stay tuned. Want to, of course, say thank you to the moderators out there. Tina Tomaszewski's in the house. Thank you for being here. Aaron Desario, the Sparky Lady. Everybody here. Jonathan Milgie, Stephanie Bowden, Paisley Wave, Fifi Barboa, Night Gazer, Sparky Lady, Chris Plain is in the house. What's up? Saroni Tubb. Hey, welcome. This is the first time I've seen your name in here. Let's see here. Simon Fly, excuse me. Grant Lavac. There's Grant. Grant Lavac in the house. NeuroStream with a $5 super chat. Thank you guys all so damn much for being here. Truly, this show does not exist without you guys. I want to also say thank you to the family over at KGRADB that streams all of our shows on their channel. This one we do live every Friday from 1 to 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And we've got links not only to our merch store, it's got some great hoodies and all sorts of fun stuff, but we got links for our co-hosts, Rather Be Squidding, and our guests for the day, Mr. John Greenewald Jr. and Lynn Wallington, who will be here at the half of the show. She'll be here at the last hour. So let's bring in, without further ado, my friend, my brother, Mr. Rather Be Squidding. What's up, dude?
Hey, not much. How you doing, Luke?
Hey, guess who's not here today again?
Mike, I miss that guy. It's been forever.
I miss him too. He's not coming to the show anymore. I can't wrangle him.
I think Susan Goff might have gotten to him.
I think Susan Goff definitely got to him. Well, there are other things that got to him, but we'll talk about it. I think we're gonna have Mike on hopefully this coming week, and we'll make some announcements about Singularity Lab, about his appearance on the show, and what we're going to be doing in the future going forward. We're going to be going through some changes here, so I hope you guys are on board for it. All good stuff, but I got to run it by Rather first. I haven't even told Rather exactly what we're doing yet. We've been running some ideas, things that we're thinking about doing with the show, but like I said, stay tuned. Change is in the wind. And if there's one thing this show's not afraid of, is change. We change all the time. We adapt the show constantly. But let's bring in our first guest for this first hour, shall we? He's a friend of the show, probably the best researcher out there in the UFO UAP game and outside of the UFO UAP game. He is the FIOA king and creator and curator of the Black Vault, Mr. John Greenewald Jr. How are you, sir?
I'm good, man. Those are really kind words. I appreciate that.
I appreciate you, dude. I really do. Especially these last 2 months. It's been interesting to see sort of the evolution of this discussion and how quickly people get bored and start eating each other in this community. And look, this is kind of like my first. It's not, this is kind of my first I guess this year. Yeah, it'll be about a year under my belt that I'll have officially been a part of UFO Twitter. So I've officially been like a full cycle through UFO Twitter. So I came into it very, very naively, trying to get everybody on the same page. Don't matter the differences. Let's come together. Let's come under the umbrella of one topic. We know there's more if we all pointing up at our elected officials, congressmen, local state representatives, FOIA requests, all of these things that we do to point up to get information back down to us and some more clarity back down to the masses and the taxpayers that fund all of these toys. And we just want a little bit more clarity. And so John has helped us with that mission in his own way. And he helped us write a letter that people were able to download. It was probably the most effective letter for the Big Phone Home 2. Awesome. We got the most responses out of your letter.
No kidding. So very cool.
No kidding. So it was a huge help.
That's awesome, man. I'm really happy to hear that. I had no idea. So very cool.
Yeah. So,
thanks for telling me.
Yeah, I was.
But you're telling me now, so that's fine.
Man, because every time I talk about it, I feel like I'm bragging, or something like that. I don't want it to come off that way.
You need to talk about what you guys did was, I'm beating a dead horse. I've told you before, but what you guys did was incredibly important and incredibly helpful. And it's awesome.
Well, we're standing on shoulders of people like you, man. And of course, Lou Elizondo and Christopher Mellon and their story and the story of all of these veterans, especially, is what kind of inspired it. And of course, this call to action that I would always hear at the end of shows. If you want change, call your congressman and senator. That's the things that I heard from you. It's the things I heard from Alejandro Rojas. It's the things I learned from, heard from Christopher Mellon and Lou Elizondo. And so I was like, well, let's just really try to inspire people to do that. So that's why we did it. But in this last year, like I said, now that the news cycle has sort of gone back to slow mode for whatever reason, and maybe you could sort of give us a little insight on this, but for whatever reason, January to about April, June is really slow on this topic from a news standpoint. And I'm actually kind of happy it is, especially right now with this whole Ukrainian crisis that we've got going on. That's news number one, and that's not going to get pegged off for a while. So I'm kind of glad that there's nothing big or relevant happening right at this moment with the topic, because I feel like it would just get eaten up by this news cycle.
Yeah.
But what do you think do you think there's a reason for that? Or am I crazy when I say that? Or, am I not actually looking at the statistics, and I'm kind of just being like a nonchalant fan looking from the stands and going, things only happen in December?
No, to be honest with you, have never really noticed that. And it may be more of a coincidence, to be honest with you. I don't think that there's any set time where things happen. I think it's just the way that it unfolds. For me, in the FOIA world, when it rains, it pours. I've seen that a lot, but I don't see it with any chronological significance. Yeah, long-winded way of saying I don't think that there's any certain time of year.
So it's just me. It's just me putting patterns together then.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
It's possible. But you know what? In my opinion, I think it really is sporadic. And I don't want to make light of the situation that's going on in Ukraine right now. So let me preface before I say the next thing. But when things like this happen, when there are big news stories, that's usually when you have things happen, like let's say on a UFO front or a Freedom of Information Act drop on whatever the topic is. It's usually when something else is going on. And what I've said quite a bit is the analogy. It's just the greatest trick of the magician. See what's going on over here in my left hand so you don't see what's going on in my right. And it's the same type of concept. As everybody's attention is way over here, then they'll just go ahead and throw things out there. And that's when you see legislation that sometimes gets sneaked through and nobody really talks about it because, again, all eyes are on Ukraine. So yeah, I don't think there's any rhyme or reason, but I think when major things are dropped, you look at what else is going on in the world. And when there is nothing else going on in the world, Friday night is a great time to drop a FOIA request, and that's usually what happens. FOIA response, that is.
Well, speaking of FOIA and responses, you have been on fire the last month specifically. What is sort of your favorite thing that has come out here in the new year that you've retrieved through FOIA?
Well, there's been quite a few triumphs when it comes to appealing the decisions by the U.S. Navy and U.S. military as a whole trying to hide this. For me, and it's not as exciting or sexy to some in the audience maybe, but I think it's actually more important that I've been winning appeals to fight the blockade, we'll call it, for releasing information. And there's been quite a few requests where I have requested information on communications between Mr. Luis Elizondo and other government officials, was denied, appealed, and won. And for those who pay attention, yes, I did discover his emails were deleted. They were deleted likely with no proper authorization, and all of that data is gone. But before I reported that story, I filed a large amount of requests to go after the other mailboxes, the people that Luis Elizondo communicated with. So even though I discovered his box was gone, the people that he was communicating with, those aren't gone. And so I did a roundabout way to try and figure out and essentially unravel what was going on during the ATIP time, and what was he doing, what was he investigating, who was he communicating with, and so on. So they pushed back on a lot of those requests. I have appealed and won those. Two of which I haven't even talked about were won about 2 weeks ago, and they were with prominent people, one of which is rumored to maybe have even taken over ATIP after Luis Elizondo had resigned. So that said, hey, those are big triumphs. I also, so again, those are sometimes not as sexy as actual documents, but those are huge wins in the legal arena because it gets us back on track on getting information. The other quick one I'll tell you is they denied all UAP information turned over from the Navy. This was the Department of Defense. And when they denied that, they said essentially everything was classified. I appealed it and won. And that's a good thing because they were trying to blanket deny everything that had gone over there through the UAP task force, videos, photographs, anything, denied it all. And so to win the appeal, to put up a case and say, look, you guys shouldn't do this and here's why, they agreed and remanded the request back. That's a huge win. Another FOIA request real quick that did yield a response was the security classification guide for UAPs. That had never been released before. Essentially what a SCG or security classification guide is guidance for the military branches and government agencies, instructions on how to classify material, in this case UAP. And you can see the secrecy involved when it comes to UAP cases, information, and everything within this guide. A lot of it was redacted, but not everything. And you can really kind of get a glimpse at the secrecy behind UAPs. A lot of people think we're in this new era of transparency, but sadly, I respectfully disagree with that.
A quick procedural question for you, John. When you win an appeal, does that mean that they give you the documents then, or does it go back to them searching for the documents and more wait time? And if it is more wait time, is that kind of equivalent? What's the expected timeline? Is it longer than if you would submit a new FOIA, or is it shorter than that?
So that's a great question. You don't automatically get the documents. What it means is that the excuse or whatever you're appealing, you can appeal quite a few different things. But in my case, I appealed the final determination that they're denying everything. What happens is that the legal department, whomever that may be for the different agencies, it varies around. What they do is they look at my appeal saying that full denial was wrong, and then they make a decision. And that decision in this case was John is right. They shouldn't deny everything, so they remand it back. What that forces the agency to do is now revisit the request, look at all the information, but they cannot do the same decision. So even though I don't automatically get the information, it makes sure that they just can't come back to me and go, no, we're going to give you the same decision, because you just get in this never-ending loop. So now they cannot do that. So will I get information? It's a lot more hopeful now when it comes to videos, photographs, and reports that were sent over to the UAP task force. So they can't come back with a blanket denial. So it's a win when, from the legal standpoint, they can't come back and deny it all again.
And is a timeline? Do you expect those to be, those future decisions to be sooner or later?
The right answer on the timeline is you're supposed to continue to be in the first in, first out queuing line that you were in. And what that means is it's first in, first out. Somebody files a request in January, well, they're going to go first in line behind the person in February. The problem, however, is that no agency really follows those guidelines. So it's kind of a crapshoot whether or not it's going to be faster or slower. It should be, again, standing in the same point in line, it should be quicker than if I had refiled a new request. Whether or not that's going to be true or not, sadly, when agencies don't follow the proper protocols or procedures, it's a crapshoot on what's going to happen.
One of the names that popped up, I think, from the FOIA request, if I'm not mistaken, is Axelrod, right? Is that who you were referring to, who took over the program?
It's actually not. And to be honest with you, I didn't realize some people were thinking Axelrod. Can I say it? Or are you trying not to say the name?
No, please straighten it out for me. Because I saw a break on Twitter, man. I'm horrible with Twitter and following where things came from sometimes. And I'm like, okay, is Axelrod here? Can we talk to him? Like, who is this guy?
Okay. So when people are talking about Axelrod, and that's the reference to the anonymous name, the pseudonym that was in Skinwalkers to the Pentagon, or Skinwalkers at the Pentagon. Some people believe that is a person by the name of Jay Stratton. Now, my background with Jay Stratton, who works at the Department of the Navy, I discovered in 2019. I had written about him in 2019. I was fascinated because what I learned was when the Navy gave me the statements they did, it was a huge story where they went on the record and said those 3 UAP videos, although they would not acknowledge that they were supposed to be in the public realm at that point, said that they considered them unidentified and labeled them UAP. That was a huge deal because they had never gone on the record before about them except to say they were leaked. Other than that, that was huge. What I had discovered after was it was Stratton. He was the one that actually wrote all of it. So for someone like me, that clues me in that he's somebody important, not only because of his position, but important in relation to UAPs. Because the spokespeople, despite what some people might say, they don't just craft statements out of thin air. They really do a lot of background. Whether or not it's true or not in the end, that's debatable. But regardless, they have to trace back what they are telling you on behalf of the agency to something, because they just don't craft this stuff, again, out of thin air. In this particular case, when Joseph Gradisher, who was the spokesperson for the Navy, who gave me that statement, this was before Susan Goff took over answering all UAP questions, it was Gradisher who got from Stratton all of that information. So I have chased documents relating to Stratton now since 2019. All of those requests are pretty much still open, which also clues me in that I hit, we'll call it a FOIA nerve, so to speak, that these requests are taking a long time because this is somebody important. To close the story, this part of the story for you, I just got a Freedom of Information Act request released from NASA. It was over 1,000 pages of UAP-related material within the email box of the senior advisor to NASA's administrator. At the time, that was Jim Bridenstine, or Bridenstine. I forget which way you pronounce it, but he was the NASA administrator at the time. His senior advisor was who I was hitting the email box on. Within those 1,000 pages, it specifically states that John J. Stratton was the head of the UAP task force. Now, even though I've thought that since 2019, that put the question to bed, so to speak, that he was the guy when it came to the UAP task force. Whether or not he'll continue on to the AOI MSG and so on and so forth, that's something else. But when it comes to the UAP task force, he's the head of the entire program. So going after his email box and that information was obviously a good thing.
So that's his current position right now, then? That's what he's currently doing?
Since the UAP task force is essentially gone and it's being replaced by the AOI MSG, that's debatable. I haven't seen really in writing that the UAP task force is done. My gut feeling would be it's not until they get the AOI MSG, fully up and running and ready to rock and roll and deliver what Congress wants. And since Stratton has been involved, obviously, for a couple years, my guess is he'll remain involved. I mean, generally, if it ain't broke, why fix it? They'll, relabel it per the Gillibrand Amendment and the requirement for what the Senate wants. But when it comes to, I don't want to say head of the snake because that makes him sound evil. I'm not trying to say that. But essentially, the head of this program, and it seems like everything goes to his office. I wouldn't think that they would change that, but that's just speculating.
Do you know where the rumors came from that he was Axelrod from the Skinwalkers at the Pentagon? And do you find any credibility to that?
No, I'm never a fan of anonymous sources and pseudonyms and stuff like that. I always get a lot of flack for saying that. I fully support the use of anonymous sources. That's I don't know where people have gotten it. I just hate solely sourced stories from anonymous sources. With that said, the pseudonyms and stuff like that in the book, it's really hard to kind of track that down with certainty. Although after I had published what I did, a lot of people were saying, "Oh yeah, that's the Axelrod guy." I wish I knew the source. I'm not really sure, but I usually try not to do that because now you're placing accusations on things and we don't really know, or I don't anyway, don't really know, number one, if it really is Axelrod, but number two, if everything in the book is true. So the minute you start saying, yes, this is Axelrod, and you place those accusations, I just generally don't go down there. I will say the description in the book of who Axelrod is, and it's very much in the front of the book. I forget what page, but in the first couple of pages even, the description fits, but I'm not 100% certain, and I usually don't try and speculate that.
Real quick, go to the chats here. Jay Fleegler, thank you, my lady, with a $5 donation, says, "Hi, Luis, and all about the changes. If it ain't broke, don't fix it." I figured I'd bring that comment up now since you just kind of said that.
Yeah.
Don't fear change. Change is good. Trust me. This is all good things. This show's gone through many, many changes, so I don't fear it. Embrace it. Chris Plain says, "Is it pouring in the FOIA world right now, John?"
Great question, Christopher, and it's good to see you in here. In short, I will say that 2 days ago, yeah, it was kind of raining. I got a couple FOIA responses from NASA. I posted some of the highlights from that. I haven't dropped all 1,000 pages yet for no other reason other than, and this isn't a tease, but it's going to come off this way. There was a document in there that talked about something that wasn't as intriguing as I later found out it maybe is. But in order for me to properly just throw it out there, I'm trying to get some comments from the key players involved. Pretty much no one wants to comment except one person. So I'm going to give it through the weekend. And if the rest of the parties decide not to say anything, then I'm just going to post it and let it. Again, I'm not trying to tease. It's not anything super explosive, but I will say I began to get very intrigued by some of the players involved. It was an event that
you
was
heard
done.
It here first, everyone. John Greenewald has exclusive, explosive news coming out this Monday.
Yeah, it's pretty much going to change the world.
Tweet it out. Change the world, he said.
F5 on the Black Vault all weekend.
Yep, world peace within 24 hours guaranteed. So no, I'm not trying to be that, but I'm also trying to be respectful. And once the names come out and stuff, you'll kind of see, oh, okay, then that's cool. So the rumor mill doesn't immediately start. So that's the only reason. But I did post a lot of the highlights from the NASA stuff. Then another NASA request came in right behind that. I had numerous CIA requests come in the same day. It seems like the CIA does a lot over a course of time, but they don't release anything. And then one day, I think somebody says, okay, we'll send this one. We'll send this one. So I think it's a final approval process. So it was raining 48 hours ago, and that was fun. Today's been kind of slow, but with the world news, a lot of times they, sometimes people get routed to other responsibilities. A lot of these FOIA offices, in some cases, FOIA is not their sole responsibility, so they get, taken somewhere else. Other times when it is their sole responsibility, again, that's when you see some interesting FOIA responses come in at 5 p.m. on a Friday night because the news cycle's over. So you go through the whole weekend and they hope people lose interest. But anyway, hopefully that gave you some indication, right? It's cloudy here on the Friday, raining 2 days ago.
All right. That's good. That's a good thing. Christian Thompson with a donation says, "Thank you, John, for the good work." Thank you, Christian. Christian's got a great website, guys. UAPDB.com, where it's a conglomeration of every single news item that breaks in one website. So you can just go to the website. You don't have to look for anything. Everything's right there. All the shows that are being posted, at what times, the links. It's amazing. You guys should definitely go check out Christian's website. Matthew Riot says, "I have a feeling national security applied to the KSM stuff, the kind that you delete." What is KSM stuff?
Khalid Sheikh Mohammed.
Okay.
One of the things, before I spoke directly with Mr. Elizondo, one thing that I had discovered that he had done was likely play a role in the trial of KSM. That his office, in short, was called the NPSMS, or the National Program Special Management Staff. I'll be honest with you, I've said it before, I'm more intrigued by that aspect of Luis Elizondo's work than I am his UFO/ATIP/OSAP, all that. And the reason is because his office, I was able to discover through naval court transcripts of the trial of Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, was responsible for giving access to KSM's attorneys to access, and it was considered a SAP, a special access program, give them access to highly classified material to essentially give KSM a proper defense. It's arguable whether he deserves one, but regardless, they needed to properly defend the man per his human rights here in America. And in order to do that, the lawyers had to access classified information. I discovered that one of the lawyers lost his SAP access status, was denied information. They tried to create a problem with the judge, and it was the NPSMS, who was referred to in the court transcripts as the SAP access people, that were the ones involved in that situation. And the timing also was when Luis Elizondo was there. I later was able to ask him, and then it later came out publicly in the quadrillion podcasts and radio shows and stuff that he's done, that he had a tie to that. But yeah, I had done a video, I think it was like back in 2018, maybe the beginning of 2019, had done a video about his job title away from the ATIP story. And it's a very hard office to research. I later discovered who took over for him. She has moved on, but I was able to discover that through another FOIA release. But again, the NPSMS is something that's very, very hard to find. Now, to go back to Matthew's question about, or comment about the classification, very quickly, the problem with it, this further supported why Luis Elizondo's email box should be maintained. And it was because it was involved in legal litigation with KSM, and that actually played a role in my appeal, saying there's no way that you guys would let this go. I mean, you've got the trial of KSM, and it doesn't. I don't care what the Pentagon says about ATIP in relation to this part of the story. It doesn't matter. He obviously, as proven by naval court transcripts, his office played a role in the trial of KSM. That is all legal evidence, no matter way you slice it or dice it. So you could not believe the ATIP stuff. Doesn't really matter. In this particular case, they should maintain all of that because it is potentially used in a legal proceeding and trial. And on top of that, it's the legal proceeding and trial of the 9/11 mastermind. So you would think that all of that material would be maintained, backed up, and saved somewhere, but according to the Pentagon, they didn't, and it's not. So even though I understand Matthew's point, and hi, Matthew, by the way, it's good to see you. Even though I understand his point, that actually further solidified why they should have saved it and why this is a much bigger story that's, in my opinion, well beyond ATIP or UFOs or UAPs.
So go ahead, rather. Sorry.
If they did, delete these emails, do you have a hunch for the rationale behind that? Do you think that it might have been because of the KSM stuff, or do you think that the only possibility would have been this ATIP stuff?
I don't see them doing it with any motivation that involved anything close to KSM. And the reason is because if that ever came out, you as a lawyer, that's a lawyer's field dream right there, to have the destruction of evidence when a person is being prosecuted. I don't see it. I tried for months before I wrote that story, literally months, to get the Pentagon to tell me what authorized it. And in short, it's called the records retention schedule. And every agency has them. Every military branch has them. And it breaks down the type of material and how long you keep it. And with Luis Elizondo's, I was able to prove they were years ahead of schedule deleting it. And, you know, I think Mr. Elizondo's comment to me was it should have been in perpetuity, which means forever. Yeah. I'm not sure. I won't go that far, but I will say it should have been a much longer than the time that they said that they deleted it. And I was able to prove all that. I tried to get them on the record. Tell me for months. I followed up so many times I can't even count and said, tell me the authorization that allowed you to do this. They never could. And so I finally got to the point that I was my last ditch effort with the Pentagon. And I said, look, I'm writing this story no matter what. This goes to the heart of why I do what I do, and I did not expect this twist and turn. I am writing that you guys don't have authorization because you can't show it to me. This is the last effort. Please give me something. I'll publish your side, you know, and they couldn't do it. So I published a story. Again, I feel it's very, very underreported on, again, not because I wrote the story and not because it involves Luis Elizondo or touches on the ATIP UFO story. But rather it is much bigger, because when you look at the improper destruction of U.S. government material, this goes well beyond ATIP and UFOs. Again, KSM is a prime example. What was lost that is potentially not found elsewhere? We'll never know. So that was, again, my last-ditch effort. The Pentagon could not cite any legal authorization, and I said, okay, then I'm putting in the article that the only logical conclusion here is that it was an unauthorized destruction of records. I was told after by someone within those offices that played a role in me trying to get a comment that the story resonated within the Pentagon. Whether or not there's truth to that, I don't know. We'll see. I don't know if anything ever happened, but regardless, I'm glad somebody heard it and heard about it, read it, and hopefully we'll do something, because it really, truly does go to the heart of why I do the Black Vault, and that's the preservation of material.
Well, it seems like a very dangerous sort of roll of the dice on the side of the Pentagon, because if Lou Elizondo does have a close tie or relation as to why KSM was prosecuted, whether that be he was in a raid or had the counterintelligence that led to his arrest, that is historical. And I feel like if I was Danny Sheehan, his attorney, that would probably be my angle into getting his emails. Do you think these emails could be recovered? Is it possible?
I mean, according to them, no. What I did to kind of recover them was tried to figure out a list of people that he would communicate with on certain issues, and then did a FOIA request on their mailboxes versus his own. So that's kind of the really kind of evil, I don't want to call it semantics, but just kind of the tactics that they employ, saying, oh, no, sorry, Luis Elizondo's box is destroyed. Well, you just have to find a roundabout way to do it. And so what I figured out was, hey, let's go to this person, this person, this person whose box is still there, and do a request that will hit Luis Elizondo's emails. And many of those are still open, or like I told you, some of the appeals that were won are all connected to that.
Ideally, I'm sorry, rather, I just want one more follow-up on this. Ideally, what would be his recourse? Like, if he can get perfect recourse on deleted emails, what would that be? If we had a perfect world, a perfect justice system, like how would this be resolved through legal means?
I don't know what his complaint was to the IG, the Inspector General of the DOD. I'm only speculating here, but I would guess that would be his recourse, that he can go to them and say, the Pentagon is denying my involvement in this program. There is evidence. Now they say they destroyed part of that evidence, because that is, you know, I call it a smaller scale, because again, trial of KSM, hello, I would consider much bigger than the debate on the ATIP UFO stuff. It just is. I mean, that's gigantic. Yeah. But on that smaller scale, you know, that's evidence to help Mr. Elizondo prove what he's saying. Plain and simple. You can believe him or not, it doesn't matter. But that is the evidence to show either way. And or at least part of that evidence. So now the DOD is saying, no, sorry, we destroyed it. So my speculation is that, yes, that IG complaint would have that in it, because as far as I know, off the top of my head, and this is just going from memory, he had written that IG complaint, or at least it came out after I had written the story. And he and I spoke at length about that story before I ever published it, and had quite a few different conversations, and he was on the record about it, and he's published. So he was aware of it. So I would imagine that that's in there, and part of the trek for him to get some kind of recourse. And then now it's going to be up to the IG on what they're going to do.
Yeah, if anyone did get, prosecuted for this, or, they found out who did this and they took action against them, would we hear about that? Or would that be something that would kind of be done behind the scenes?
So I've tried to get the IG on the record on anything related to the UAP evaluation that they're doing, which I believe differs from Mr. Elizondo's submitted IG complaint. And I've asked them about both, and they won't talk about it. The result will depend on their conclusion. If they do publish anything without the need for a FOIA request, all of the names of those involved, but likely minus Luis Elizondo's, would be redacted. So let's say somebody did get a smack on the wrist, or whatever might happen, we won't find out who, and we likely wouldn't even find out any title, but hopefully we would find out that something was done. Will that happen? Again, that's all speculation, because the DODIG, they will publish reports from their evaluations and even their investigations, but how much you learn from it depends on the classification they want to keep it at.
I had one more question regarding this, but it just slipped my mind. I'm sure I'll think of it in a second. So I'll go to this next question that somebody here had, and I guess we're shifting gears a little bit. Well, not really. I mean, we're still on the topic of Elizondo, but he says, please ask, and I'm thinking he means John, not Chris, about the NSA doc that Elizondo referred to during the Jimmy Church interview.
I've been called a lot worse, so all this is okay with me.
Yeah, no, Chris is definitely mild as far as things that have been slung at John
given
Greenewald
UFO
lately.
Twitter as of late.
Yeah.
So the NSA document, obviously this became much more controversial than it really should have. I think some people took it as an attack on Luis Elizondo, and this will probably make my biggest haters out there cringe. I spoke with Luis Elizondo after I wrote what I did online, and as far as I can tell, there's zero animosity between him and I. I made sure that all of this crud on Twitter and stuff like that is not resonating into a truth, because a lot of those claims are just bunk. And he and I, as far as I'm concerned, and it sounded like the same on his side, although I don't speak for him, we're fine. However, a lot of people got upset that I had talked about this document that Luis Elizondo brought up on Jimmy Church. In short, it was an article by The Sun. For those who aren't aware, I mean, they do very tabloidish, embellished, headlined stories about UFOs and aliens, among other news stories. But the UFO stuff really gets embellished to alien levels. And Mr. Elizondo brought it up on Jimmy Church as evidence that the conversation has changed. Talked about a newly declassified document from the NSA about communication with extraterrestrial intelligence. Well, in short, I started getting a lot of messages. And whenever there's a newly declassified document that's rumored about, and I love this part, but a lot of people will come to me and say, hey, you got to go after this. You got to go after this. And so I had got to come with some of these messages, but I was wondering, where is this coming from? Like, why are people talking about this document? Because the minute somebody brought it up to me, I knew exactly what it was. It was one of the first FOIA requests I ever did. Not the first, but one of the first, I think 5. And I remember getting the document because it stuck out to me in 1996.
Wait, so this is something that one of the first 5 FOIA requests that you've ever done.
Yeah.
This Sun article goes to.
Well, it wasn't profiling me by any means, so I don't want to make it seem like, oh, they profiled. No, not at all. But the document itself, which was titled "Communication with Extraterrestrial Intelligence," and I brought it up on my monitor here to make sure I was speaking accurately. But that is the document that was being referred to in the Sun. And so once I figured out the document they were talking about, I was like, why is this surfacing now? This has been around for decades. And I don't even be the one to claim to find it first, even in 96. Yeah. I believe it was first released, in the early 80s. I was born in 81. So I think that it was actually released in 1980, potentially 1979 when some lawsuits were going on. So anyway, I once I figured it out and then kind of backtracked the story that Luis Elizondo brought it up. And I will say now nothing more than what I told Mr. Elizondo directly. And it, as far as I know, didn't upset him. I was surprised he brought up the sun. I just am.
What was his response when you said that?
That I was surprised he brought up the sun?
Yeah.
He didn't fight back. He did post a public tweet responding to my messages, which were talking about this document and it being connected to the sun and it being completely misrepresented. The story behind it was there's nothing about this that's actually real. It's a training exercise. It's a fictionalized training exercise of extraterrestrial messages. And how it was conveyed on Fade to Black, look, I mean no disrespect, but it wasn't accurate because the article from the Sun was being read. Now, I think that upsets a lot of people, but when people come to me, I'm not going to privately tell people, no, it's all bunk, and leave it at that. No, it's all bunk. When I get a certain amount of messages, it clicks that people want to know more about whatever it is people are asking about. So that kind of guides the videos that I make on the channel when I can make them. Wish I had more time. So this one I made a video out of, and that just sent some people through the roof because they thought yet again I was attacking Mr. Elizondo, and I'm not. Right. In fact, in that video, if people actually cared to watch, I only mentioned Mr. Elizondo once or twice to give the backstory of how this was all motivated. But essentially just focus in on the sun and how that's a really bad source for information, and then went into the history of the document, what it was, training exercise. There are different versions of it floating around. I talk about why, and to take that a little bit more, it was published in 1966. That was when this was first written internally at the NSA. I was able to show proof of that it was a 1966 document, and then republished in the early to mid 1970s, also internally as a training exercise within the NSA. So I go through a lot of that in the video and so on and so forth. And that's all it is. And I'm a big advocate for just making sure that the information that's floating around is accurate, because when the Sun published it, I generally try and keep up with any big headlines that gain traction, and just to kind of see what's going on. I like to watch the news. I never heard about this until Luis Elizondo had talked about it on Fade to Black, and then everybody was all into this newly declassified document. And so that's why I kind of latched onto it. But sadly, 90% of the story was wrong. The document is real, but the entire context that was published and then bantered about, and then that resonates within, social media and stuff like that, it was all wrong. And so that's why I made the video.
Did you have a follow-up? I don't want to cut you off if you did.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a valuable service that you do to kind of, to Elizondo and to the community, right? Because, I'm sure that he wants to be presenting accurate information, and, if no one's calling him out when he doesn't, things can go off track. So, thank you for pointing that out and doing what you're doing.
Well, and I appreciate that. And it's not my intent to just look, we all make mistakes. I've made plenty of them. One of my recent interviews, I misspoke and put a message, on my video like, hey, I misspoke at this point. It was my interview with John Ramirez. And some people say, oh, he never admits he's wrong. I mean, I've got, plastered messages all over when I do make mistakes. We all make them. What's interesting, though, was the reaction to it. And I think some people, and I think your audience is likely excluded from this. Some people are less concerned about truth. They rather just people talking about it. For me, that's just not the right way. And it goes to the root of why I think it's important to get the message accurate. And it's because of the whole stigma thing. We've heard a lot about stigma since 2017 about this topic and why people don't want to talk about it and this, that, and the other thing. Well, why do we think that stigma was there for so long? And it was because, in my opinion, it's because of inaccurate information, and that inaccurate information being told and told 3 million times over for years and years and years. And that will create the stigma that there's not much to the UFO topic. So if you try not to keep accurate, and this is generally speaking, I'm not targeting anybody here, but if you don't try and stay accurate, then when you do get people to look your direction, whether they be politicians or influencers or whomever that wants to take a hold of the UAP topic and take it to the next level, if 90% of what they're seeing is bunk, and they look into the claims and try and verify it and then can't, or realize that the stories that have been circulating for years and years, and in some cases decades, why would they latch themselves onto it? And that formulated the stigma that we have had and have faced for so long. What really drove that home for me was probably 15 years ago when I started producing television and wanting to do documentaries on the stories that I had heard for so many years. But with History Channel and National Geographic, you have to source everything. So all of a sudden, when I was trying to produce and write these shows, I had to back up what I was saying. And you start to realize that there's more legend and lore when it comes to the UFO topic than there is truth and reality. That's just the harsh truth behind all of this. And so that taught me back then that a lot of the stories we were hearing weren't accurate. And yeah, I do believe that played a huge role in the stigma. Now, fast forward to where we are in 2022. I don't want to go back there. And when you call something out, it's not personal. It truly isn't. And I don't think Mr. Elizondo's a big boy. He's pretty tough. Like
he said it so many times. This is the part that kills me.
What's that?
Is he's said so many times, like, you ask me anything you want.
Yeah.
He's said it pre-show on my show every single time. Like, ask me anything you want. Might not be able to answer it, but you can ask it. So, to a point where we were having this conversation today behind the scenes and about a question that was asked to him on someone's show where you thought it was super offensive. I found it interesting, primarily because it's probably the most vulnerable I've ever seen him when asked a question. Like, that one really hit close to him. And so for me, I liked seeing that. And I thought that the question was, even though it was a very insensitive question, it was posed in a way as the most sensitive possible way to pose that question. I was like, okay, that's not a question I'd ask, but I do like the way you did ask it, and the fact that you had the moxie to ask it. Yeah. And then the response to it was just, I thought, very heartfelt. It was a beautiful moment to see a window of a real emotional human, not Lou Elizondo, the UFO guy or anything like that, but just the raw human emotion of someone who probably has taken someone's life based off of his answer, and what that means and how heavy that carries on one's soul. But this idea that people get more offended than the person who's being asked the question or the person whose statement is being put into question. I find that absolutely bonkers, because I believe you 100%. You call Lou and you're like, hey, just to make sure we're square on this, like, I didn't mean to offend you. And I'm sure I imagine how that conversation went in my head, and it was probably incredibly cordial and totally understanding on both sides. Now I'm curious, like, did you get a sense that when you hung up the phone, like, he knows he messed up on this? Like, and for me, I don't think this, even to classify it as a mess up or whatever we want to call it, it doesn't have any, like, he didn't do this on a Tucker Carlson or CNN, or some major news outlet that got duped by bad information. Yeah. It happened on Jimmy Church. It happened with only the people within the community made this a big deal.
So I never, and forgive me for not wanting to answer specifically your question. I never talk about private conversations, but I will tell you what he wrote publicly about it. Yeah. And so that's the only thing I'm comfortable saying. Because again, I'm always apprehensive of talking about private conversations. But What he said specifically to your point publicly was, it's been brought to my attention an inconsistency of the Sun's article of an alleged NSA document. For the record, I never vouched for its veracity. I used it as an example of increasing government transparency over the last 4 years. I simply quoted the headline, that's all. So, so that's what he said publicly. I respectfully just kind of disagree with vouching for the veracity, because he had the article ready. You know, there was an intent to read that on Fade to Black. And what I think really struck a nerve with his biggest fans, which sometimes are not nice at all.
No, they're actually the meanest people in the community.
Yeah.
No.
Like,
I'm not joking. They are,
yeah.
This is not a knock on Lou. The people,
no, it's not. I agree.
The people who are adamant fans, the guys who think he's infallible, are the meanest, most viscerally nasty individuals that I've dealt with in humanity. They're terrible people. Yeah,
and I hope. Because I'm not afraid to call those people out. And let me say for the record, to everybody's watching, I do not hold Luis Elizondo accountable for anything anyone else says.
Right.
What I do hope is that more people speak out against it. Because the same people that are doing some of this vicious stuff, and I'm not talking about just disagreements. I love disagreement.
Right.
You know, I've come on your show, I don't know how many times now. We don't always agree. We're not arguing with each other and calling each other names. That's what I'm talking about. And the last couple of weeks, and it's not only just directed at me, but a couple other people, the accusations get very slanderous and libelous on what they are saying, and it's brutal. So I do hope, and I hope Mr. Elizondo does it as well. Speak out against it. You know, when you see it, I've done it live on the air. I've got it even before I ever met Luis Elizondo. When I was on a radio show, somebody was really saying that he was within a CIA op and he was a disinformation agent and this, that, and the other thing. And I said it live on the air. I was like, look, I'm critical, but I won't get on that bandwagon. Right. And I said no on that show live with the host. You know, I'm not afraid to say it or defend him when what I believe false accusations. I don't believe he's maliciously involved in some op. I haven't been there, you know, to see any evidence of that. Not afraid to say it. When people now take it way farther than that and not even talk about what people say, but rather, again, very slanderous things about people personally, I wish more people would speak out about it. But that, you know, that's just me in a perfect world, I guess. But at the end of the day, I will say really quickly, and I'm sorry to interject on you. The times that I have interviewed Luis Elizondo on the air, live, put him out there, never once has he said, don't ask me about this, that, or whatever. So I will echo that as well, that he's always been open to any question thrown at him. And I've always admired that. And I'm hoping to have him on my show again. He and I chatted about that. We'll see if it comes to fruition. But, you know, I think that these types of what some people, you know, lash out over, I would hope, understands why someone like me wants to make sure that it's right. And I want to make sure that if he really thinks I'm full of it and I'm attacking him, then he is more than welcome to come on my show and say that. I have no problem. I don't edit those interviews unless there's a technical glitch. I don't take out what people say and invite him on. And where I left him without, you know, again, revealing what we talked about privately, our last communication I felt was fine. That we're going to talk about setting up another interview when his schedule permits, and that's it. So no bad thing to say, but I think it's important to look at that, what I called a trend. And this is, and I'm sorry I got off on a tangent there, but I think this is what really ruffled the feathers of some of his biggest fans. Was I created a Twitter thread justifying why I said that these issues are important. And I went back to literally the day one in October of 2017 of the misrepresentation of imagery and essentially evidence being put forward. And it is a growing list. I call that a trend. I believe that should be asked about, you know, and if it's all just carelessness, fine. But there's enough, I think, at this point, and enough claims that some people don't care about, and that's fine. I do. I want to know how did this happen? Why are those things? And if it truly is just a mistake, then this is all the more reason that people should work together, because last I checked, it's all a team effort. Work together so this stuff doesn't happen. But it's very territorial with many of these sides of the story, and then that's where you get the drama, and it's a shame.
No, it's draining as well.
And draining.
It's emotionally draining to try and bring rationality to an irrational conversation. It really, really is. I'm glad to hear that he's going to be coming back on the show. I'm looking forward to that.
There's no date, so I don't want to.
Yeah, no, that's fine. But the idea
totally
that you guys are talking about it is exciting.
Yeah.
There was a question that was asked on UFO Garage podcast to Lou, and the question was, what is the question that nobody's asked you that you want somebody to ask you? But it just nobody's done it yet. I mean, do you think there is a question like that exists for Lou Elizondo that he would actually be able to answer and provide?
Did he answer? Did he?
No.
I didn't see it.
No, he didn't. He basically was like, "Well, if I told you that, then it basically, I'd be putting myself out there to possibly get in trouble." And so I'm just curious to know, do you think there is a question like that would be able to avoid his security clearance, but also maybe bring some sort of clarity or revelation to the discussion that's being had?
I would imagine if there is, he's done a considerable number of interviews. I would imagine that if with that considerable number, if he had something that he really wanted to say, he would work it into the conversation. So I'm not really sure. The one thing that I want to see is that IG complaint. That's and I'm guessing somebody's asked him about it. From what I understand, he named names, and I want to see. I want to see it. And if he redacts the names, that's fine. But I want to see what he told the DOD and whether or not anybody's ever asked him that. I'm sure somebody has alluded to it, but I want verbatim. And if that question is, Lou, can you please read from top to bottom your IG complaint, I will sit there and give him the airtime and let him read it. So whether or not we'll see it, I'm not sure. I tried through FOIA, was denied, which wasn't surprising, but I tried anyway. I have asked Mr. Elizondo if that can become public, and I don't have an answer to share with you other than essentially the answer was no, for at least for now. I kind of got when the time is right, and I totally understand that. I don't harp on him, because if there is an investigation, it's still ongoing. He probably just doesn't want everybody to speculate or start hammering names that he knows of to start hounding them, so he's probably holding back, and that's fine.
We got a couple more comments here from the chat. Jay Flieger says, I want to thank John for the year in and year out hard work that is forwarding this movement. I think a lot of people echo that sentiment. Thank you so much for the donation.
I appreciate it.
Boo the Beagle says, love for Lynn and John, hands up, hands up. Thank you, Boo the Beagles. First time I've seen you in the chat. Welcome to the show. And I think this is a super sticker again. Geez, thank you so much, my lady. Appreciate it. Lisa Bowden with a $10 donation. Maybe we'll never know the truth. Can't believe anyone. What do you think about that statement? Do you think we can't believe anyone?
You were awesome, by the way. I popped into your show the other day when you were interviewing Grant, which was a great show. It was fun to put a face to Grant. But you had read my Twitter comment about truth. And I'll paraphrase it here. I believe it will stand up to anything and everything. And I think it's a good practice not to believe everyone, including me. And anything that I come out with where I don't say, hey, I'm just speculating. Any claim that I make, you can stomp up and down on it, ask any question you want, attack it, throw missiles at it, doesn't matter. What I publish when it comes to documents and so on, and I don't label it as speculation, you can attack it. So I have always operated off of the assumption of not believing everybody, because if they're telling the truth, we'll be able to prove it with evidence. If they're lying, then you're not going to get let down. And I've been let down way too many times in the last 25 and now probably 25 and a half years to just blindly believe everybody. And so that's a very good mantra to have. And I encourage everybody to double check what people say, including me. I offer the exact same thing my direction, double check what I post.
Oh, man, I know we're running out of time, but if you can't quickly, what is your biggest disappointment in that regard, that you trusted and you went, damn it?
Man, that day you're putting me on the spot. I'm trying to.
It's okay.
My gut went to more of a personal thing. There was personal in the sense that I don't want to name the person, but very well-known researcher who turned out to not be who I thought they were. And I'm not sure if that was just this topic that takes hold of people, or what. And so that was, it's hurtful to trust somebody and to share things with, and then you see they just turn around and are either not the person they are or change over time. That to me is what sticks out.
Okay. A couple more things here real quick and we'll get you out of here, John. Don't publish the super chat if it looks like I agree that Elizondo fans are vicious. Just saying I don't agree.
Not all.
Well, I'll just say this: it's not just Elizondo's fans either. There's acolytes of Mick West that are equally as vicious. If you upset someone's core belief, they can get vicious.
They can get super vicious. Jazz Shaw with a $50 donation says, no comment aside from saying support this show and John's channel, please. And yes, I'm doing a shot in honor of this. You guys are making Jazz Shaw buy his own shots. Actually, no way. Skyhawker with a $50 donation. They have my support. Have another shot, Jazz. There you go. Woo! Thank you, guys.
That's awesome.
Damn, that's awesome. Well, John, we said we keep you in for an hour. God, I want to keep you for 10 more. But I appreciate you stopping by the show, man, and adding clarity to this discussion as a whole. And I appreciate you, always reaching out behind the scenes as well, and just saying it's going to be okay, big guy. Don't worry. We'll get to do this together. And I just appreciate it. The support has been just unbelievable from you, man. I can't thank you enough. And again, you are the torch in a very dark cave. And just keep doing what you're doing. I mean, I'm here to support you any way I can. And I hope this Elizondo conversation happens, because I think the best conversations have been on your channel with him. So,
I appreciate that. And vice versa as well. Huge fan of what you guys do. So I know changes are coming, but I'll say don't change too much.
No, it won't be too much.
I'm sure it's going to be fine. So it's been fun to see you guys grow, and all my best wishes. And whenever you need something, feel free to give me a call.
Always. All right, my man. We'll get you out of here. Have fun. I'll talk to you soon. And hey, let's set up a photo shoot so I could get some new headshots of you.
So yeah, for a long time there's no photos.
I'll take some headshots for you.
I try private, but it doesn't work. So yeah, we'll figure something out. I'll have
something out, dude. Free headshots. Pretty,
lose some weight.
Free headshots. Don't worry about it. You're beautiful as you are, baby.
We'll get Jazz to bring the alcohol and shots. We'll be good to go. Those will be some fun pictures.
Yeah, that'll be some fun pictures. All right, my friend. We'll talk to you soon.
All right, thanks. Take it easy.
You too.
See you guys. Ciao. Bye, Rather.
See ya.
I love that guy.
It's always great talking to John.
Absolutely love John Greenewald, man. Dude, he's just the best. And when people jump on him, I find it hilarious. And you did bring up a great point there, Jay Fleegler, about it's not all Lou. You're right. It's not all Lou Elizondo supporters. And there are people for Mick West. There are people for Stephen Greer. There are people. Anytime you upset their apple cart, they go immediately, it seems like, to violence. like they want to end everything about you. And it's just absolutely wild.
Yeah, these figures, Mick West, Lou Elizondo, they don't need people like me sticking up for them. They're capable of handling themselves.
They're big boys and girls. And that's why, we try not to stick our noses in this person's right. I back this person 100%. But when it comes to John Greenewald, I've got no issues doing that. We're not John Greenewald sycophants. We disagree with John. I disagree sometimes with John Greenewald all the time on you know, like for example, the Wilson Davis document, you know, we talked about how he for him being in production and I being in production. And when he pointed this out, I was like, yeah, this kind of does read like a script, but I'm like, I mean, you know, is Eric Davis like the guy who's going to sit here and write a script about this stuff? If so, who's he selling it to? Are there any other examples of scripts or fiction that he wrote that we could kind of compare this to? So yeah, like, but we disagree, and it's fine. Like, we don't get mad at each other. We don't yell at each other. It's the same thing with like we had Peter Robbins on yesterday. And Peter's a beautiful human to talk to because you can say these things that you're thinking out loud, and he doesn't get upset or frustrated with you. You know, and in most cases, he actually can really look at it from your perspective and sympathize with that perspective. And that's awesome. That's all we want in the conversation.
Yeah.
Right. Well, speaking of valuable conversations, let's bring in our next guest for the day, shall we?
Yes, please.
You can find her pretty much everywhere, but this weekend specifically, she's going to be doing her Women in Ufology event, which I'm super excited about. I cannot wait to watch this. How are you, Lynn Wallington?
I'm so great.
Host of Spaced Out Radio. What am I missing? Host of Spaced Out Radio. You're starting your own channel. You're doing the Women in Ufology. You're a witch, which I don't even know if we're gonna have time to get into that. You know, but you've been in the conversation for a while now, and I always love listening to you on Spaced Out Radio and your show on Saturday nights.
Thank you.
So welcome to the show. I'm glad you're
Thank
here.
you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
Too.
What's that?
I said, you haven't been here since the Big Phone Home too. That's my fault. I haven't asked you.
I know, but that's okay. I'm so excited to be here now.
By the way, yes. I love your haircut.
Thank you. You know what? You want to know a secret?
Yeah.
It's not cut. This is my hair growing out. I had extensions in before.
Okay,
so
there you go.
I got through that like awkward grow out phase with
extensions. All right, I see what happened. You went and did something crazy with the hair, then you got extensions, and now it's at a point where it looks really great. It's a great pixie cut. I think it looks awesome. So yeah, I didn't know you had girl secrets.
I know, right? It's so funny. When I first put them in, people were like, it was a topic of conversation on the SOR like for like 3 weeks. It's like, what happened with Lynn's hair? Like all of a sudden people were like, did I wake up in a different dimension and Lynn has long hair? And I was like, it's extensions, guys, but everybody forgot, I think. So,
I love it. Yeah. Well, so, okay. I guess let's start here. I mean, let's promote your event. Let's talk about it. Let's get people excited about it. So what inspired you to do the event, and who did you ask first?
Oh my gosh. Oh wow. You know what? I don't remember who I asked first, because I asked a bunch of them all at the same time. I kind of came up with the idea and I was like, hey, Dave, what do you think if we do a Women in Ufology event? And he's like, well, when do you want to do it? I think it's a great idea. I was like, how about the end of February? He's like, that's 3 weeks. You can't do that. I was like, yeah, sure, I can. Whatever. And so I was just kind of like, threw it out to like, I don't know, like 15 people in one day. So I don't remember who the first one was. But yeah, there was a lot. It just kind of was just like a big whirlwind. But that's kind of me. That's how I operate anyway. So that's cool. Yeah, but it's going to be great. We have so many amazing women coming. It's unbelievable. Unbelievable.
So,
we've got. Go ahead.
Yeah, go over it. Go. Who's coming? Tell us.
Let me see. You know what? I don't want to like forget everyone, but I have.
I know the feeling exactly you're going through right now.
I know, right? So Jess Rogie is my co-host, and including her and I, there's like 20 people. So it's a lot. You know how this goes. But I know, let's see, as I'm looking for it. So I know I'm going to go session by session in my head. We've got regressionists is going to be kind of our first session. Here we go. And we've got Lori McDonald, Leslie Mitchell Clark, Kathleen Martin, and then we have Sev Talk, Dandy Meyer, Cheryl Costa, Alien Girl 111, Misha Johnston, Chrissy Newton, UFO Jane, Christina Gomez,
I'm sorry.
I
didn't mean to cut you off. So the first one is regressionists.
Regressionists, yeah.
And so what was the second category of ladies?
Is going to be female experiencers / like women in the hybrid program. Okay. So it's not specifically just hybrid. And then, so they're each an hour long. We start at 4 p.m. So in the female
Wow.
experiencers, we have Sev Talk, Dandy Meyer, Geraldine Orozco, and Sinead Wellahan. And then from 6 to 7, we have government program / Black Ops. And we have Misha Johnston in that one, Samantha Mowat, and Lorian Fenton. And then from 7 to 8 p.m., we have female researchers in the field of ufology. So that'll be Cheryl Costa, Bree, who's part of our SOR team, aka Thin Lizzie Borden, Alien Girl, and Gemma Jade. And then from 8 to 9, we have like a group interview with Alex Dietrich. And we're going to have Chrissy Newton, Christina Gomez, and UFO Jane. And then from 9 to 10, we're going to discuss what's coming for the future of ufology. And that's going to continue to be Chrissy Newton, Christina Gomez, and UFO Jane. So it should be fun. And then Jess Rogie is my co-host. So yeah, amazing. We have a really incredible group of women, and there's so many. The fun thing about this for me is like doing this, I've learned about so many more incredible women that are in this field. Like there are a lot of us, and I wish I could get everybody on there all at the same time, but it's just, we've already crammed like 20 people into 6 hours. So I want to make sure everybody has a chance to talk, but
right.
Yeah, we'll definitely have to do more because there's just so many. It's incredible.
Well, there's a demand for it for sure, and that's kind of the problem I ran into with the Big Phone Home too. Is like in any kind of event like this is that the panels are great, but the problem I've seen with panels is that it's sometimes hard for the conversation to get going, and then when it does, panel's over, and then we got to go to the next panel. It's like, I need another hour with this panel. It would be so great. And then of course, you try to fit everybody that you of course respect and remember and watch or follow, and then when you've got the schedule, and then you're like, okay, who else can we pop in here? Who else do we know? And so, I think you're never going to please everyone when you an event like this together. It's inevitable. Someone's going to get mad. Someone's going to have a problem with it. But I mean, you want to talk about a couple of those issues that you've run into?
I was going to say, well, Twitter's been interesting.
What's been the number one? I mean, I'm assuming it's just
just the fact that it's women.
Trolls of the male sort.
Yes, exactly. Yes. Like, why just the women of ufology? Are we men too stupid? And I was just kind of like, for real? Like a lot of them, I just don't even respond because it's not worth it. It's just kind of like, okay, you're just trying to stir up trouble. And like, I can't be bothered with it.
I always found it funny when people would be like, why is there a black entertainment television and not white entertainment television? There is. It's called NBC, ABC, Fox, CNN. It's been around since you've been born and before. It's okay for the blacks to have their one channel. Like really? Like this is where we're going. So I always find those arguments so weird.
They're so funny. And we have gotten that too. They're like, where's the diversity in this panel? And I'm like, well, my co-host is half Asian. Cheryl Costa is trans. I'm like,
so now we need
everybody's ethnicities just because they look white to you. They may not be, don't sit there and make these assumptions, but it's hard. Like you said, you can't please everybody, and we do the best that we can. So
it's gonna be great. Like, what do people want? Do they want you to put, Geraldine Ocasio, a Latina, Latina experiencer? Like, I mean, like, what do you want? Like, it's so.
Let me list out my DNA profile for you.
But we did a 23andMe on everyone who came in the show, and believe it or not, we're more than 50% diverse on these panels.
I know.
So if you did that, they'd complain that there's no aliens on the panel, right?
Right.
So
well,
I don't think you can ever win.
I know you really can't. And if there were aliens, they were like, why aren't they all human? They would just come back with something. Yeah. There's always.
I wonder what a 23andMe test would come back with on an alien.
I know that would be interesting,
right?
Just a lot of question marks, like, 50% Zeta Reticuli and 27% Arcturian, and
so what is the this is not a what's the conversation you're looking most forward to? Like, what was the guest that you booked and you went, oh yeah?
Well, all of them, but I think the topic, I mean, my favorite topic is always government programs and Black Ops. Like
Okay.
I dig that. That partially because that's part of my experience too, but it's just really fascinating. And I think that, and we're not going to be discussing, it's not going to be only about women involved in these programs in any of the sessions. Because a lot of these women have been working in this topic, in this field for years and years, and they just have so much information to offer. But I think it is interesting though, the women like that are involved in Black Ops and government programs, because it's different. You don't hear about it quite as much, even though there are plenty of us. It's just for whatever reason, and this is a question I'm going to ask them tomorrow, which is like, why do you think there aren't as many women that come forward who are involved in these programs and talk about it? It's interesting.
Oh, I feel like that's kind of obvious, no?
I don't know. Why? Do you think?
I think that the obvious thing is, well, first of all, especially when it comes to, say, someone like Alex Dietrich
Mhm.
or even Lori Redfeld, right? That's her last. Am I pronouncing her
Lori
last name
Fenton?
correct? No, Lori Redfeld. She was on the Big Phone Home 2, and she was at the Rendlesham Forest during
cool.
other
Okay. Yeah.
incidents that happened there. And I
Mhm.
think, I mean, especially for like an Alex Dietrich, I'll just stick with her.
Yeah.
How difficult it is to get into that cockpit as a
Mhm.
woman.
Yeah.
Going into a man's world and
Yeah.
succeeding and being better than other men that are also gunning for that position and
Yeah.
beating them out, finally getting that position, and then having to deal with, I'm sure, a whole line of BS that comes with
Yeah.
sitting in that cockpit. You're going to have to deal with boy humor and all the locker room
Yeah.
stuff that comes with a culture system like that.
Yeah.
And then having to be put in a situation where you're doing a flight mission test, and now you're seeing something that at first you think is extraordinary, but you don't
Mhm.
think it's make it past the aircraft carrier, and then all of a sudden it's a world headline and you're on 60
Unbelievable.
minutes. So
Yeah.
I could understand why women would be hesitant to come forward and share their stories from especially a military perspective,
Yeah.
because they really work their asses off to get there, and to
For
put
sure.
any of that in jeopardy, just to tell people the truth on
Yes.
something that doesn't affect their pocketbooks, it doesn't affect their daily life as far as getting the kids from school or paying your
Mhm.
bills or whatever, the mortgage.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I think that would be my guess. Maybe I'm wrong on that, but
No, I think that that's probably very true. Like with people that are in the military, I guess I was thinking more along the lines of experiencers who've been involved with like MK Ultra or different things like that. The secret space program. There are women that are involved in the secret space program, or any of the other like covert programs that we hear about. You don't hear as many women coming forward and talking about being in them. Like think of super soldiers. How many female super soldiers can you name?
I can't name one super
No.
soldier, let alone a female one. I don't know any super soldiers.
Oh,
Who's
there's
this?
a
I
whole
see.
world
Yeah,
to get introduced to.
yeah. You're just opening up a whole nother can of worms. I mean, look, we've really tried in the last, I'd say 4 months, we've put a concerted effort into understanding and having discussions with the experiencer.
Yeah.
And I think when you were on the phone home, you were on the panel with NK Kranda, and there was a point in the discussion where we're talking about Air Force pilots and their high credibility and why they're so important to the discussion. And then NK chimed in, well, why isn't the fisherman just as important? Shouldn't their testimony be taken just as seriously?
Yeah.
And it kind of hit me like, yeah, absolutely. But then there's also a reality to it. Like if I'm going to a senator or congressman, the thing that I think that's going to change their viewpoint or get them maybe considering this as a reality is going to be the Air Force pilot, especially if they're on a on a security committee or national security committee or any sort of national security level type committee. But to just sweep the other people under the rug and say, yeah, they don't really matter. I understand how that's insanely frustrating.
Yeah.
But at the same time, just speaking from an experiencer standpoint, because I've had an experience myself, like
Yeah.
I understand why people have a hard time swallowing this. And so I never try to put my experience as fact or something that's got to be taken into a conversation or even into consideration, because unless you were there,
Yeah.
it's just another story,
It's true.
it's just another, which I think most people go, sure,
Yeah.
Will, you saw
Okay.
that thing when you were 13. How many people were there? Tell me more, but if I lead with, hey, F-16 fighter pilots are seeing these things. There's cockpit recordings. They've had private classified briefings with congressmen and senators. The then congressmen and senators have now written laws in order to make sure that this data is collected properly, and then tell them my personal story. They're way more open to the idea if I lead with that. So I can see for both ways, but I mean, I mean, God, should we get into super soldiers? But I mean, I guess let's go with what was because you said you have experience with military incursions. So can you tell us about that experience?
Yeah, sure. Well, there's a lot, so I don't know that we'll have time to get into all of it, but yeah, I'll kind of give you the brief overview.
Well, we're going to have to bring you back and do a whole show with you.
Yeah.
But
no, that would be
if
fun.
you can give us an abridged version, because I haven't heard this story.
Okay, yeah. So I grew up in the military. My dad was in the Air Force. And when I first kind of had I had a weird, I guess it's not weird, like when you work with experiencers, which is what I've done in case anybody's not familiar. I worked with experiencers for like the past 10 years.
Well, you're also a psychologist too, right?
I have my degree in psychology. Yeah, okay. I don't have my PhD. So
you
have to, in order to earn that title, you have to have your PhD.
That's right.
But yeah, so I have run support groups and have basically like coordinated support programs. But anyways, so I had a dream, like a lot of experiencers do, where they describe this really vivid dream that it was so real. You woke up and you felt like it was real. And that's what really kind of got me interested in the subject and looking into it more. And so I had called the Free Foundation. I spoke to, for those who know him, Ray Hernandez, and he found out my background in psych. And that's where he's like, hey, we're trying to develop a support program. Would you like to help us out? So that's where I really got involved in it. And I kind of went down every rabbit hole. Like I researched everything because I wanted to know if people were going to come and talk to me. I wanted to know what they were talking about, right? But the one thing I stayed away from, I talked to one super soldier and I was like, that's it. Nope. No, thank you. I'm good. I don't want anything to do with that. And then, and likewise, I stayed away from the secret space program because I was just kind of like, they're related. I don't want anything to do with it. And then a couple of years later, I had a regression and it was all secret space program stuff. So I found that interesting because I hadn't researched it. So I didn't know the information about it. I knew like kind of the brief overview of what the secret space program was, but I didn't know details to it. So I was able to go back. And
Sorry to cut you off, but what were some of the details that came in that regression?
There were, well, I went on board this ship. I was brought up to the ship. So I like sketched out very, very rough sketch of the shuttlecraft that brought me up to the main ship. My dad was on there. I saw, there was like a woman in a tank. I don't know. It was very odd. But it was more like the shuttlecraft was the thing that really stood out to me because, and this just happened fairly recently. I was doing a show where we were talking about advanced aircraft. And so I had done research beforehand and I found this artist rendition of a plane that's supposed to be coming out in the next couple of years. It hasn't even been made yet. It looked exactly like the shuttlecraft that I sketched out. And it was really strange. Like he even showed Bob McGuire. I was like, Bob, okay, this is really kind of weird, but like, look at this. And he was just like, yeah, that is really weird. So it was just little things like that. It wasn't anything that was like groundbreaking, but there are those moments where you're just kind of like, is there something to this? Because it's difficult. You have these memories and they feel like very, very real memories. And, but that logical part of your brain is just like, really?
Yeah.
Were you really right above the moon? Were you, like, but, yeah. So I had a couple of regressions. I had 2 regressions. And both were mostly about, like I remember working with reptilians. it was a military craft, which wasn't surprising to me once I kind of adjusted to the idea of it. But it took me a good like 7 years to have another regression. Like I really had to process it and kind of work with my own rational mind to say like, you know what, just do what you tell everybody else and just go with it. Like don't try to, you know, logically like analyze it one way or the other. Just be open to it and see what comes up. And so it's interesting because the third regression, which was not that long ago, not a lot came up from that. The other two were mostly like on board the ship, like kind of almost like touring the ship and understanding like kind of my role on it, which like, you know, was talking with the ET a lot of the time. That was part of my role on it, which was not surprising because I am claircognizant and I've known that for a while. Like information just kind of pops into my head. It was great for taking tests in school. I didn't have to study. It was awesome. But other than that, like I never did anything with it. So that wasn't surprising to me that like, okay, I could see if this is all real, like that would be a good role for me. But there are definitely a lot of pieces missing. So yeah, that's kind of the abridged version. The more I'm like looking into it, I'm going to be speaking at UFO Con next month, and Lorian Fenton, who she runs it, she said write out all your experiences, like the earliest thing that you can remember. Because I had weird experiences as a kid, but I always kind of assumed they were more paranormal. But then I also had things that now looking back, I know are like signature, you know, experience or kind of things like, you know, waking up with your pajamas on backwards or completely off, you know, folded up on a chair, or like waking up standing in the middle of my bed one time when I was a teenager. That was a really weird one. I use that example all the time when I'm talking about it, but it was very odd. It's jarring to wake up standing in the middle of your bed. You know, so just kind of weird things like that. So as I was writing these all out, like she suggested, more and more information is just like coming. It was almost like flowing. And yeah, it was really interesting. I know since I've been looking into this, like I recognize signs of programming. Not surprised by that at all. So like when I start to uncover more information, I get really nauseous. Like I literally feel like I'm going to throw up, and I get like a stabbing pain in my head. And these are all different signs of programming. And I know this from working with people as well. But I met Misha Johnston years ago, and I was talking with her and I was like, Misha, I keep having this. She's just like, yeah, that's totally normal. I didn't know the throwing up thing, but it makes sense for me because I hate to throw up pretty much more than anything in this world. So if you want to like deter me from looking into something, yeah, make me feel like I'm going to throw up, that would probably be a good way to go about it. Anyway.
That'd be a very strange tactic to take with someone.
Right.
Rather, did you have any questions?
So far? This is all a little bit out of my element.
I know.
Brought up a good question that might be worth asking.
Yeah, this is what I was going to go to. Yeah.
You know, what are your thoughts on people who say that regression are potentially implanted suggestions by the people who are doing the regression? He said he finds it fascinating, and he's tried to be hypnotized, but apparently he's not able to be.
Yeah.
I would say it's a possibility. It certainly is. Like we can't rule that out. So that's why you want to go to someone who is a credible hypnotist, a regressionist, someone who has worked in the field. But there are different tactics. So, you know, I do have my degree in psych, and I was certified to do hypnosis. So I have done some regressions on people. I don't do them anymore, but there are different tactics that you have to take in order to avoid that. You know, you can't ask leading questions. You kind of just have to go with what the person is where they're leading you. You have to let the person lead it. And one thing people don't realize is during these regressions, very, very few people actually go under so deeply that they don't remember it and or aren't conscious of what they're saying in the moment. It's a very light trance state. You are very much conscious of what is going on and what you're saying and the information popping into your head. And that's one of the things that, like, as a regressionist, you constantly have to remind them, don't try to rationalize it. Just, you know, let me know what's coming into your head. We'll look into it later. We'll rationalize it later, but just report to me kind of what's coming into your head. So you really have to let the person lead that. But, you know, there is always the chance that it might be something they've heard before. You know, it may be something that was in the recesses of their brain that they're repeating. I mean, there's always that chance. And so that is the difficulty with regressions, is that you never know. And for people that like myself who were involved with programs who are programming, you can have false memories. And I've had that. So I can testify to that. So during my first regression, I had, it's so funny now looking back on it, because I'm kind of like, why didn't I catch this? It's a little weird. Like, I was like, oh yeah, my job on the ship was to take care of these ET animals. I worked in a lab, which made sense. Like, before I was a psych major, I was a zoology major. I wanted to be a vet, right? So in my head, that kind of made sense because I love animals. But the fact that I was working with animals on a military ship, like, really? Let's question that a bit. Never popped into my head. And so it was years before I was kind of like, that doesn't quite add up. And the moment I thought that, I got really nauseous. And so I was just kind of like, aha, okay. So you have to learn to kind of look into these things. You do have to look into them rationally and do question it. You have to question it. You don't just take everything that comes out during a regression as gospel. You can't. You have to question it. You have to think about it. You have to look into it, and you have to allow yourself the time to try and figure it out. So it's always about kind of doing your research. But if it's information that like the shuttlecraft that I didn't know about, and that's why I was actually really glad I didn't know much about the secret space program. And to this day, I don't watch people who talk about the secret space program for that very reason, is I don't want to have that information in my mind. So when something comes out and I can later verify it, it's much more meaningful to me. I can say, okay, I didn't know that before. And those correlate. So it's hard. It's a great question, and it's definitely something you have to consider, but go to someone reputable, go to someone who knows what they're doing and how to do it, and go to someone with a psych background, because a lot of times trauma will be, uncovered in these regressions, and you need someone who knows how to, one, not only deal with trauma, but separate you from the emotional aspect of it during the regression. So there's definitely a lot to consider. It's never something that I recommend people go into lightly. Think about it, do your research, talk to other people who've been regressed by that person, or, colleagues of that person. Like, really just do your research. It's the best suggestion that I can give.
Do you, one thing NK was recommending to us to follow up the regression with either a psychologist or psychiatrist. Did you also do that as well? Did you sort of take these experiences to someone who might be able to help you break them down? Like, I guess my question is, how certain are you that these experiences are real versus something that maybe might have been implanted in a regression?
It takes time. And that's why, like I said, I took quite a while before I went back and got another regression done. I love NK, but I would actually disagree with her on that recommendation, because you never know how a psychiatrist or psychologist is going to react. Having worked in that field, I can tell you, you don't know. And there could be damage done if, say, a person truly is an experiencer, but say that psychologist doesn't believe that these experiences are even possible. They're going to then think, are you hallucinating? Are you delusional? They're going to look at all of the aspects that they know and understand and know to be real, right? That know that these are possibilities, as opposed to, if they don't think abductions are even possible or real, they're not even going to consider that possibility. So it's a definite, it's a dicey road. If you know someone is okay with it and someone is open to at least hearing about it, even if they don't know about it, they're open to the idea of it. Yeah, go for it. Talk to someone there. And there are therapists out there that are going to be open to it and aren't going to make that like automatic judgment. But it's a dicey road. You don't want, delusional on your medical record.
I'm kind of curious. What's the theory for why regressions are necessary to unlock these memories? Is it because these experiences are very traumatic and they're naturally repressed, or is it the theory that whoever is bringing you up is kind of wiping your memory, kind of thing?
Yeah, it's a good question. Both. It depends on the person. No two experiencers have exactly the same experience, and no two people are going to react exactly the same. So, there may be someone who sees a mantid being and they're just like, oh my gosh, like they were amazing. And another person who's like, that is the freakiest thing I've ever seen, you know? So it could be the same experience, but they're going to react very differently just because we're all different. You know, we all have different experiences. We all have different fears and things that we're able to deal with. And so our level of trauma is going to be different. So it could be your brain's way of protecting yourself. That's absolutely a possibility, which is, again, why you need someone who is able to deal with trauma doing a regression. Or it could be, I mean, we know that there are certainly reports from many, many experiencers. I mean, I've talked with, hundreds of them at this point, that have, during their regressions, uncovered that these were screen memories. I mean, we have the term screen memory, right? So yeah, it's a possibility, either one.
Someone said in the chat that it was a winning alien, said Lynn actually painted those behind her. Aren't they awesome? Oh, Thin Lizzie Borden. Oh, hey, Thin Lizzie, how you doing?
Yeah. Yes, I did. Thank you.
I love it. That's awesome. So you also paint as well. So you talk about that a little bit. What got you into painting? When did you start painting?
Well, I've always been really like creative. I come from a very like even my dad, even though he was a civil engineer in the Air Force, so very, you know, logically minded, but also he painted when he was younger as well. In college, he painted, and so I've always loved anything artistic, really. My minor was art history in college. Like, it's just something I've always really loved. I hadn't done it for a while. I actually just fairly recently got back into doing it, and it's great. It's an awesome stress reliever. And it's also just nice to have that kind of creative outlet, especially when you do like the stuff that we do, which is, you know, can be very draining, and not in a negative way, but you know, sometimes like hearing about experiences or doing the research that we're doing or dealing with kind of all of the stuff that's involved with this community, sometimes you're just like, need that breather, right? And so, your daughter's going to research. Oh, thank you, Bree. You're so sweet. Yes, my daughter's in cosmetology school. So yeah, so it's just been a great outlet for me, and I really enjoy it.
Do you find, and John Music says, Lynn is a phenomenal woman and dear friend of mine. Hello, John.
So
welcome to the show. Do you find, I've noticed here in the last years, talking to a lot of people in the field, it's been a lot now. I don't even know how many, but it seems like everyone who's either had an experience or is really into the topic is an artist on some level, whether they're a musician, whether they paint, draw, you know, they're very spiritual, holistic. They're very in tune with their feelings a lot of the times. And it's funny you say your dad, who also painted. So I mean, if he was painting in college, he probably had an artistic sort of soul. Do you find that a lot? Am I accurate when I say that a lot of folks either that have had an experience or have had an abduction experience or experiences similar to yours are artists?
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's interesting because this field, you know, we kind of call it all ufology, but we really have like the ufologists, the researchers, right? And then the experiencers. We have these two halves that aren't necessarily like cohesive all the time. And you know, our researchers they're wonderful, they're analytical. I also love research, so I really appreciate that side. But yeah, the experiencers, and I don't know if it's just that, whether you know, a specific type of personality just, you know, happens to also be experiencers, or if having those experiences, and this is what I think is probably more than likely, having those experiences awakens like different parts of your brain. And so, you know, you hear a lot of the times people who are experiencers, they do become more spiritual, they do become more aware of kind of the natural world around them, and it's possible that maybe they just need an outlet, and this is the way that they've done it. But yeah, that's true. I never thought about it.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like, I'm an actor. I paint as well. I've had an experience. Rather's just a boring software guy. He hasn't had an experience.
He's one of our researchers. We love him.
Yeah, It does not compute. I mean, I'm wondering because I've been hypnotized, but weirdly enough, and I've thought about this a couple of times. Right before I moved to New York City, I was seeing a hypnotist because I was trying to quit a habit, and
Mhm.
I was like, let me try this. I've never, saw it on Oprah. I was like, let's give this a shot.
Yeah.
And so I went in, and it was almost like talking to a psychiatrist in a way, because a lot of times I would just sit in the office and have a conversation with the
Yeah.
person who's going to do the hypnotizing. And then, they had me do a visual exercise of standing on a cliff and picturing an ocean. And then they started asking me details about what I was visualizing. And then when we were done with the exercise, she was like, you have an incredibly visual mind. You're able to
Yeah.
create visions and be able to fill them with detail very, very well. So I'm wondering, when you say unlock part of your brain, do you think any part of this, with myself included, is just like you said, a brain that is able to manifest these things from either our imagination or our just creativity, just pure creativity? And so because we are creative
Mhm.
people, we're in tune to that sort of that being an artist, maybe that gives us visions that maybe necessarily aren't tangible, but that feel very real. Do you think that's a possibility, or maybe
I think
something that?
it's a possibility to a certain extent.
Yeah.
And before I started working with experiencers, I would like have agreed with you, like, yeah, absolutely, that's a possibility. But there are definitely details that aren't necessarily widely known in the public that correlate between people that don't know each other. And so, there's a part of me that had to step back and take a look, because a lot of this was very, like I said, this was all brand new to me when I first even started working with experiencers. So I was kind of like, a galactic federation, like dragon beings, what am I going to say to this, right?
Right.
But I
Well,
finally
I'm
was
honestly, that's kind of where I'm at right now. Like when I hear Galactic Federation, super soldiers, and secret space programs,
yeah,
I think my first reaction is exactly what yours was, and
yeah,
you've changed that reaction. But I mean, like when I think of secret space program, like how extensive are we talking about here? Like
very
how big is
extensive.
this? Very extensive.
Yeah.
See, this is where I'm like, I don't want to offend you, but
No, no, no.
for me, I'm like, okay, where does the funding come from? Where do they hide these spaceships? If there's a space program that large, which is, I'm assuming, maybe bases on other planetary systems, whether it be the moon or Mars, secret sorts of spaceships, huge spaceships that have shuttles that go between them. Where are these ships? Where are the people that are working on them? How do they get paid? Where's the budget? Like, have you found any, like, I guess, tangible evidence like that you would take to, say, a congressman or a governor or whoever and say, you need to look at this, like, here are the receipts and here's how I can prove, A is B to C to D all the way to Z?
Well, Lou, if I could find that, it wouldn't be very secret, now would it?
Right.
Um,
Okay, that's fair. but that's kind of easy. If I'm
No, I
gonna let you
know.
off the hook, I'd be like,
Yeah.
okay, no problem.
Yeah, no,
But
no,
I
no.
mean, like,
No, there isn't. There
when we
isn't.
look at budgets, I'm sorry,
Yeah,
just
no.
last thing, but like when
Yeah.
we look at budgets for, say, war, or say the National Defense
Mhm.
Authorization Act that just got approved for almost a $90 billion budget, and that's every year they get this budget.
Mhm.
Like a space program of that magnitude would be a bigger budget than that. So where's this money being? How are they hiding that kind of budget, I guess?
Right. Well, there's a couple of options. Well, as we all know, there is a huge, huge black budget that every
Mhm.
year, I mean, last I heard, I think it was like maybe $8 trillion or something crazy. I can't remember. Don't quote me on that one. Certainly could be part of that. Also, and this is where you kind of have to take a little bit of a leap, but let's just go there, right? And this is how I started, like, with people. I was just like, you know what, I'm just going to go there. It's real to them. 90 billion.
Correction. It was 900 billion. Sorry.
Oh, okay,
I always think of 900 billion as an absolute absurd amount.
It is
and
an
it
absolute,
is,
yeah.
you know, we're almost at $1 trillion. But when you say the whole, the Black budget program is 9 trillion, the whole budget for the entire United States is, I think, $3 to $5 trillion.
Okay, then I could be very wrong.
Yeah,
it was a ridiculous amount. I can't remember. Right. Yeah, they did a news story about it a couple of years back. I don't know if you guys remember that, where they were looking at the Black budget and they were just kind of like, why is there so much money going to this? And what is it that they're doing with it? But anyways, so if we're going to take the leap of okay, let's just maybe assume that this stuff is true, right? Let's just kind of go down the rabbit hole a little bit. Mm-hmm. And if you really delve into the secret space program, you start to learn that we are not only much more advanced than we know publicly, but that we work with other, we're at 7 trillion were unaccounted back in 2020. Yes. Thank you, Xavier. We're working with other ET. Why am I blanking on this?
That's okay.
Races, ET races. Yeah. So a lot of what they do is trade. So it's very possible that it's not necessary to have all of the money that we would have to do it on Earth if we can trade materials, if we can trade knowledge, if we can trade this or that. That's another possibility, and I think when it comes to programs like this, and any Black Ops program, really, the part of what makes it so complicated is it's a little bit of everything. There's never one answer, I think, that's going to cover all of it. And so you have to kind of realize how complicated these programs are, and for a very good reason. They don't want you to figure it out. They don't want us to understand it. It's the reason they're Black Ops, right? So it's hard because it's a little bit of everything. So I don't know. I wish I had a better answer for you.
Yeah, I have some of these same problems about the you being able to see the proof here in our realm of existence. But I also see or hear about studies of people taking DMT and other really powerful hallucinogens and kind of having some of those same experiences where different people who don't know each other will report kind of the same thing. But they're clearly not going anywhere outside of wherever they're adjusting these psychedelics. Mm-hmm. Do you think that there might be some similarities there, that some of these abductors, experiencers are kind of entering a different realm of existence, maybe some conscious realm, and it might not be apparent to us in this physical reality, but they might be, going somewhere, an astral plane or something like that?
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely. And, it's funny, when I started working with experiencers 10 years ago, a lot of it was very conscious, very physical experiences. And now when you talk with experiencers, many more are kind of what you're talking about, like, hi, Enzo, that they are more on the astral plane or just consciousness-based experiences, right? And so it is interesting, and you do bring up a good point, and you're right. A lot of these people who try DMT or ayahuasca or whatever, they have very similar experiences. And so then we have to sit back and look and say, okay, well, are they having these experiences because taking this opens up your mind and it allows you to access these different parts of the cosmos, let's just say? Or is it that these chemical compounds are creating the same experiences within the brain in one person that they are in the other, and I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I'm sure scientifically you could look at it and say, that's probably the case. They probably are stimulating this part of the brain, and therefore it's creating this type of an experience or this type of an awareness or a godlike experience where you're meeting the creator or whatever it is, that a lot of people say that they have with these. So it's very possible that maybe having a certain type of experience, and I can't say this would cover all experiencers, but specific types of experiences, maybe they cause similar reactions in the brain in different individuals. That's very possible. But the only problem with that with experiencers is, even though there are similarities, there are no two experiences that are the same. None. And to go even further down the rabbit hole, let's say they're MyLab experiences. Now, this is a military abduction, right? So it's very possible that you're given hallucinogenics or who knows what they're doing, right? So now there could be tampering with the brain. Most likely there is tampering with the brain in the MyLab experiment. But so it complicates it. That's what makes this subject so much fun, is it's complicated and it's mysterious and we just don't know. And there's just, you like researching, you would love talking with experiencers. It gets very fascinating. You're just kind of like, oh my gosh, I want to know more, because there's just so many rabbit holes you can go down. It's great.
Okay, we got one last question here from the audience before we let you go, and then we'll also give you another chance to promote the show. That's tomorrow. Starts at 4:00 Eastern Standard, correct?
Yes, thank you.
So Baby Goat asks, and you mentioned reptilians earlier.
Yeah.
Can you please ask for physical descriptions of these beings?
Yeah, it depends. There are different types of reptilians. Yeah, there's different types. The ones that I've worked with are the ones that everybody hates, the Draco reptilians. They're very militaristic. They're very big, kind of bulky reptilian people. If you think of Samantha Mowat pointed this out, and I was just kind of like, oh, you're right. If you've ever seen Jupiter Ascending, and there's that big, giant kind of black reptilian that is in the movie, if you know what I'm talking about, very similar to that type of an appearance, right? But then there are also reptilians that are very slender. There are some that are more, if you think about just the variety of lizards that we have here on the planet, right? Or reptiles, alligators are much different proportionally than, say, a gecko. And so there are different species of reptilians, and so they're all going to be a little bit different. But kind of the stereotypical reptilian that you hear about is often the Draco, and they're just these very big, kind of muscular, very intimidating, dominating presence. I love them, but I know a lot of people don't.
Okay, I actually have one more question for you.
Yeah.
Because I know you're getting married. Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you.
What does your significant other think of this? How does he handle this, or she?
Oh, that's a good question. So this was all very new to him, right? He is very open to it. He's amazing. Obviously, I wouldn't be marrying him if he was just kind of like, you're crazy. But it's new to him, though I knew that I was doing. And we're talking about how the B-2 stealth bomber looked kind of like the Batmobile. I was talking to Spaghetti Lee, and his dad actually, I guess, helped work on it. And so before it was public, he said, it looks like the Batmobile. And so then my fiance, Dave Hurley, put in the chat, soft disclosure. I was like, yes.
Cool.
Yes,
so he's coming around.
Yeah.
Well, Lynn Wallington, thank you so much for the hour that you've provided us here. This was a fun hour. We got to dive into your story a little more and get some more details. But before you get out of here, please tell everyone where they can find this event tomorrow. And also, you're starting a new YouTube channel. If you could tell us quickly, we got about 2 minutes left in the show. But the floor is yours, my lady. Go for it.
Oh, thank you so much. Yes, so we have the Women in Ufology event tomorrow. Starts at 4 p.m. Eastern and goes until 10 p.m. That can be found on space.radio right here on YouTube. And every hour will be a different group of women. So we're going to publish the schedule, so you'll be able to see that. It actually may be up on Twitter already. Could be wrong. But anyways, so we have that tomorrow. And then, on Monday, starting at 8 a.m., Monday morning, I start my new channel called Rebellious Ufology, and it's going to be great. We're going to talk experiencer stories, and I'm also going to be going over kind of the list of UFO shows for the day, the times, their topics. We have these guys included, which is amazing. So if you guys have a podcast and I haven't talked to you yet, write to me, rebelliousufology@gmail.com. That was my announcer voice. Did you hear that? Went right into it.
That was good.
So, because we want to get as many shows on there as possible to be able to provide people, a list of the shows for the day, because there are so many amazing shows now, and it's hard to keep track of them all. So, that's what we want to do, is be able to.
No, that's very cool. And I would also, I recommended this at the top of the show. We had Christian in the channel here, Christian Thompson, and he writes runs a website called uapdb.com.
Mm-hmm.
And you can go there, and it gives you a list of every single show, every single article, every single important tweet that's ever done in one spot.
Nice.
So that could be a good resource for you to find other shows and maybe just reiterate what he's doing there. And I think that's awesome. It's always cool to see people use their own platforms to help promote other people's stuff. So I appreciate it. Thank you for even considering us.
Oh gosh, thank you for doing it. Well, we have so many amazing shows out now and all kinds of fun topics we're talking about. So let's get everybody aware of them and and watching something that maybe they hadn't seen before.
I agree. Well, good luck tomorrow.
Thank you.
I'll be there watching, rooting you ladies on. And
you.
we'll see you soon, Lynn. Thank you so much for stopping by.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Yep. Ciao.
Thanks, Lynn.
All right. That was a fun day, you guys. That was, man, we covered the whole spectrum today. We covered
something
it all
for everyone.
Something for everyone in today's show. So thank you guys so damn much for coming aboard, getting weird with us here on another episode of the Unidentified Celebrity Review. Before we get out of here, I want to say thank you to Das Tapes. I want to say thank you to everyone in the chat, all of the super chats that you guys came with incredibly strong today. Great questions from the chats today. Thank you, Tina Tomaszewski and Aaron Desario, for keeping the chat safe and fun. I want to say thank you, of course, to Rather and Jane and Michael Mataluni. I want to say thank you to Bill at KGRADB behind the scenes helping us with the show. We've got a great shows lined up for next week, you guys, so stay tuned. I think that's everything. Yeah, we're going to be available on podcasts. Go check out the Discord links, everything. All the links are down below. We'll be on Discord in about, I'll be on there in about 15 minutes, half hour. I got to upload the podcast, and we're going to continue the discussion on Discord. So join us there. Other than that, you guys, love you all very much. Stay safe out there. Until next time, peace.
People around here been dropping like flies already, and where's that getting us, huh? Nowhere. Fast. You know what old Jack Burton always says at a time like this? Who? Jack Burton. Me.
I believe you're enjoying all this. Indeed, Captain. I've never seen him look so happy.
Shut up.
Well, what do you know? I finally got the last word.
I'm going to tell you all right now, all of these wonderful people would not be here without Patreon supporters like you. If you enjoy credible news, reviews, and commentary on UFOs and UAPs 5 days a week, you want to support this show. What's your name? Marty. Marty, look how easy this is, Marty. Pick up your phone. Boom, you're a Patreon member. I mean, look, it's so easy. You just click the link, which is right here. Just for $1 a month, you can support this show. Just fill out the information and pledge what's comfortable for you. It could be $1, $5, $10, or who knows. Just support.